Chapter 2273. Versilia raised her head proudly, and her eyes were bright. Even though she was not as tall as Grievous, she still held her head high. At this moment, she was also trying to look at her from an overlooking angle with an arrogant expression. "Oh, Versilia, you are really hopeless, but I am not qualified to talk about you. In the end, we're all here for the mysterious power in Dustless's body," Grievous said with assurance. Grievous and Versilia are both smart people. Naturally, they understand the value of Dustless. Even if the incantation engraving is damaged, it can be easily repaired with medical ninjutsu. It means that using the incantation engraving will only hurt the body, and there will be no danger to life. It means that everyone can improve their strength. Even if there is a problem, they can hand it over to Dustless for treatment. Now you two have confessed without being pressed. In the end, you approached me because of this. In the spacious hall, a burst of white smoke suddenly swept up, and then Dustless appeared like a ghost. His handsome face was like the sea without waves, calm without the slightest ripple, and his deep eyes were shining as if he could see through everything. The secrets of the two women's hearts could not be hidden from these wise eyes. "Dustless, why are you here?" Grievous and Versilia cried out involuntarily. The two girls jumped in fright, and their expressions became extremely awkward. It was not difficult to hear that the conversation between the two was heard by Dustless. "Why, do you feel embarrassed now?" Dustless saw that both women bowed their heads with a little shame, and suddenly became interested. He was not angry, and joked, "Didn't you quarrel very much before? Now it's quiet." Actually, Dustless had long understood what the two of them were planning. It was like a dream in his heart. Grievous and Versilia were not love-struck fools. Dustless did not think that the two of them had fallen in love with him at first sight. His charm was not that great. It is clear that the two of them are completely attracted to his potential, but Dustless has no resistance to this. This kind of thing is too common. Now that things have come to this, I will also lay my cards on the table with the two of you. Anyway, there will be a day to say goodbye sooner or later. Dustless did not hide the slightest, and said plainly, "Soon, I will help Claire solve her sister's problem, and I will leave this world." "What are your plans?" "Leave this world? Where are you going?" Grievous and Versilia's hearts tightened, and there was a loud bang in their heads. In their eyes, Dustless was a veritable money pot and a delicious cake. If he suddenly left this time, who could they rely on in the future? "Of course, I have already done it with you too." Wu Qin stared at the two women and said seriously, "If you want to leave with me, you can, but you can't come back in the future. If you refuse, I can leave behind something for the two of you. After all, we were once husband and wife." Dustless calmly looked at Grievous and Versilia's gazes. He had already done his best. Grievous and Versilia looked at each other and lowered their heads at the same time. They really didn't know how to answer Dustless's question. "Are you really not from this world?" Grievous sized up Dustless deeply, and her mind couldn't help but wander. Come to think of it, this kid is indeed strange. He is powerful, but the ability he displays seems to have nothing to do with the battle style of the elves, which is puzzling. In the vast universe, the world you are in is just a speck of dust in the universe, a drop of water in the ocean, Dustless said calmly as though he was talking about something insignificant. Grievous and Versilia were dumbfounded. What Dustless said was too far-fetched for them. The world before them was already vast and boundless, not to mention the vast universe. They needed time to digest this massive information. Think about it carefully. The final decision lies with the two of you. I won't make things difficult for the two of you." Dustless explained softly and left as though nothing had happened. Dustless knew that he wasn't a good person. Nothing could be perfect, but at the very least, he had to have a clear conscience. "No matter what the two of you choose, I won't blame you. After all, everyone has a different attitude toward life. Didn't I mention before that the difference in our realms means that our views are destined to be different? In the spacious classroom, only such a sentence was left, and the two of them were left in a daze. This guy is really unpredictable. Grievous lifted her gaze slightly and looked at Dustless's disappearing back. Her heart was filled with mixed feelings. She was really happy that Dustless was so considerate, but there was also a knot in her heart that she couldn't untie. Everyone had their own concerns. Suddenly leaving a world without any worries was something that no one could easily let go of easily. Therefore, Dustless gave them enough time to think about it. This kind of choice is really confusing. If Wuchen can kick me away, I can still hate him a little. I definitely won't go far away with this brat. But this brat suddenly became so gentle. Sigh, it's better if he's a little rough with me. Versilia pouted her thin lips and complained to herself. She was extremely dissatisfied with Dustless's attitude. Seems like we have the same thoughts. Grievous smiled bitterly. She understood what Versilia was thinking, inferiority complex. That's right, inferiority complex. Compared to Dustless, their horizons were too narrow. Compared to the stars under the night sky, everything in the world was dim. Therefore, inferiority complex was inevitable. If Dustless had said some harsh words, it could have broken their fantasy. But what he said just now was completely sincere and came from the bottom of his heart. It was hard for them to reject him. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2274. It sounded ridiculous, but that was the truth. Grievous and Versilia both had very high statuses, but they were nothing in front of Dustless. Even though he had no power or influence, in a world where the strong were respected, the people with the biggest fists always had the final say. At the same time, Claire's older sister also hurried over, but the change in the two was unexpected. Dustless originally thought that the two would calm down and have a chat, but who would have thought that as soon as they met, the two sisters would unexpectedly start fighting as if they were incompatible. Without a doubt, Claire was definitely not her sister's match. Thus, during the duel, she was miserably suppressed by the other party and was in a sorry state. Even Dustless couldn't help but be startled when he saw the blazing flames wreaking havoc in the air. So much bullsh**. Dustless hurried over as soon as he came out of Grievous's office. If the fight continued, the entire dormitory might be forcibly demolished. Furthermore, in his impression, Claire's sister, Rubia Elstian, was quite good to Claire, so the fight between the two was really strange. Back then, the reason why Rubia Elstian betrayed the Fire Spirit King was because he wanted Claire's life. In anger, Rubia betrayed the Fire Spirit King and stole the strongest flame spirit, the God-slaying flame. Thus, it wasn't hard to see that Rubia loved her sister Claire very much. Thus, Dustless felt that it was very strange when he heard that they were fighting. Claire. You've become a lot stronger. On top of the charred ruins, a girl with dark hair stood tall and graceful. Her blood-red eyes circled around Claire. Looking at the stubborn girl, she felt a bit absent-minded. Was this still the little sister that she used to worship and admire? People always change. Claire said sternly as she met Rubia's gem-like eyes. Although many parts of her clothes were burnt and her fair skin was clearly visible, her pair of stubborn red eyes were extremely resolute. Hee. That's true. Rubia, who looked a bit like Claire, nodded slightly and said coldly, I heard that you've joined Dustless, right? Call him out. You're here. Aren't you looking for me? Claire furrowed her brows, feeling quite displeased. After all, Versilia was a good example, stealing her sister's man. Looks like what Restia said was true. You've really fallen for that guy. Looks like I was right to come here. That guy is really unforgivable. At the end of her speech, Ruby's murderous intent surged. Her pupils were almost materialized with murderous intent. You seem to hate him. There shouldn't be any grudges between the two of you, right? Claire's pretty face was filled with confusion and doubt. She knew her sister pretty well, but she didn't remember her sister ever mentioning dustless. I didn't remember before, but I do now. Rubia couldn't be bothered to explain. Soon after, as if deliberately teasing Claire, she smiled ambiguously. Also, our relationship isn't simple. Oh. What a mischievous sister. Dustless, who couldn't take it anymore, stood out and looked at Rubia like an idiot. He had an expression that said, I don't know you, so don't try to climb up the social ladder. Originally, Dustless, as an outsider, didn't need to participate in the conversation between the two sisters. But now that Rubia had started spouting nonsense, if Dustless continued to turn a deaf ear to it, he might be tricked again. You bastard. Dustless's appearance immediately attracted Rubia's firepower. She stared at Dustless for a while and finally said coldly, You're weaker than I imagined. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Dustless couldn't deny it. After all, his body was indeed of the small and skinny type. He was only about 1.75 meters tall. His body wasn't considered tall, and he was even a little skinny. His skin was also very white. Where was the demeanor of a peerless expert? Sometimes, he looked more like a gigolo who lived off a woman. It's fine if you two sisters talk things out. There's no need to drag me into this, right? Dustless looked at Rubia and said with a trace of dissatisfaction, If you cause some unnecessary misunderstanding, I'll also be very troubled. No. You're already involved. Rubia shook her finger and explained, You killed that guy, Godfeng Zhao, right? From that moment on, you were destined not to be able to stay out of this. Don't you two ignore me. Seeing the two echoing each other, Claire raised her voice and angrily made her presence known. Outrageous. In broad daylight, these two actually treated her like air. How could she have any face left? What do you mean? Dustless frowned and immediately tried to persuade, If you want to be enemies with me because of Godfeng Zhao, I have nothing to say. But I have to give you a piece of advice. It's best if you don't fight with me. Otherwise, your end will be very miserable. Is that so? Hearing this, Rubia's eyes flashed with a strange light. She laughed with a strong fighting spirit, It's fine if you don't say it. Now that you say it, I'm even more interested in you. Boom boom boom. As soon as she finished speaking, Rubia released a powerful divine aura that blasted Dustless's body, causing his clothes to swell. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, Claire turned into a gust of wind and stood in front of Dustless without hesitation. What's wrong, Claire? Are you afraid that this pretty boy will get hurt? Rubia's brows twitched. It was not difficult to see that Claire was very concerned about Dustless's safety. That's not it. Claire shook her head indifferently and suddenly said, I'm afraid that Dustless won't hold back. If he beats you until half of your body is paralyzed, how can I ask you questions? You. Hearing this, the corner of Rubia's mouth twitched. Her pretty face darkened and black lines appeared on her forehead. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 reviews plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2275. Beat me until half of my body is paralyzed. Ha ha ha. Rubia laughed. She was so angry that she laughed. This was the first time she had heard of someone who could beat her to the point that half of her body was paralyzed. Especially this weak-looking gigolo. What angered Rubia the most was that these words came from the sisters she used to respect the most. That's true. Dustless also stood on Claire's side without hesitation and said calmly, "You're right. It'd be bad if we beat her until half of her body is paralyzed and she loses her dignity. I don't have the time to take care of her." "You too." Countless crows flew past Lubia's head. Her cleavage trembled with anger and she said with an ugly expression, "Very good, very good. Claire." Lubia locked her gaze on Claire and said sternly, "You don't want me to cause trouble for this guy? Then I'll beat him up." Lubia looked at Dustless as if he was a criminal who hated evil. She felt that her most important person had been snatched away by him. "Ah! Is my face so attractive?" Dustless realized that Lubia was like a wolf or a tiger. He couldn't help but rub his nose and say awkwardly, "Get out of the way, Claire. You're not her opponent. She has a lot of runes engraved on her body." Dustless walked in front of Claire and looked at Lubia with a smile. He crooked his finger and said, "Bring it on. If you can make me take a step back, you win. Then you can do whatever you want to me." Arrogant. Hearing this, Lubia's delicate face turned cold. She held a sharp blade in her hand and her body turned into a fiery red stream of light as she rushed forward. Poochie. In an instant, Lubia arrived in front of Dustless like lightning. She stabbed her sword at the speed of lightning and pierced through Dustless's abdomen. So weak. Lubia was stunned. She looked at Dustless who had been stabbed and was surprised. She mocked disdainfully, "So weak. You're not worthy of my sister." "Is that so? I have the same opinion as you." Dustless's cold voice suddenly rang out. He indifferently said, "Even if I stand there and let you kill me, you still won't be able to kill me. You are truly too weak." She looked up and saw Dustless looking at her. His face was as calm as still water, and his eyes were as calm as an ancient well. How could he be seriously injured? He could even catch a hint of mockery. That was the most direct form of disdain. This guy. Is he trying to show me? She lowered her head and looked at the sharp sword that had pierced Dustless's abdomen. There was no doubt that this guy was seriously injured. But what was puzzling was that Dustless's expression did not change in the slightest. His eyes were also staring at her without blinking. Then, he couldn't help but look at Claire, who was also unexpectedly calm. "Keep pretending. Let's see how long you can last." Lubia laughed and swung her sword at Dustless again. Poochie. The sharp blade pierced through Dustless's left arm, leaving a hole the size of a hole. "This time you should." Lubia smiled and looked at Dustless's face. Her smile suddenly froze and she cursed, "Do you feel uncomfortable if you don't get cut into pieces? TSK, not bad. You have a better future than Claire." Dustless was still unmoved. He looked at Lubia and mocked her. She could even hear him saying things like her cleavage was bigger than Claire's. "You should give up. You are too far away from this guy." Claire didn't hold back and said, "He is just teasing you. Otherwise, you would have been killed long ago." Lubia remained silent, but her pretty face became more and more unsightly. She thought that Dustless's reputation was undeserved. Now, it seemed that he was indeed unfathomable. The enemy was standing right in front of her. Sadly, she couldn't kill him no matter how hard she tried. She was quite frustrated. "I know your goal." Dustless stopped teasing Lubia and said, "You betrayed the Fire Spirit King because he wanted your sister's life, so he stole the strongest fire spirit, the God-killing flame, right?" Dustless stretched lazily and yawned tiredly. The wound that Lubia left behind was slowly being healed by the glint fruit. "Is this true, sister?" Claire looked at Lubia with a complicated expression. She had always been suspicious of Lubia's betrayal. She remembered that her sister had taken good care of her. "How do you know all this?" Panic flashed in Lubia's eyes. She didn't dare to look at Dustless's glasses. Those clear eyes seemed to be able to see through people's minds. Just a glance was enough to make Lubia feel anxious and uneasy. Anyone would feel uneasy when their biggest secret was exposed. I know more than this. Don't think too highly of yourself. You can fool others with your little tricks, but you can't fool me. Wu Chen went straight to the point and said, so, you took a fancy to Feng Zhao, but to be clear, it's nothing more than seeing his potential. You want to use his Devil King's power to kill the Elf King in one fell swoop and create a world without elves. But it's a pity, at this point, Dustless chuckled. What you didn't expect was that I suddenly rose to power. And I killed the person you entrusted with such an important task, God Feng Zhao. So, you hate me to the core, right? That's right. Dustless revealed all of this. Lubia also admitted that her plan was to let God Feng Zhao awaken his Demon King's power and use his power to kill the Spirit King. Unfortunately, the plan couldn't keep up with the changes. Before the plan could even fully start, the male lead was killed by Dustless. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2276. Since you knew about my plan, you deliberately went against me. It would have been better if Dustless hadn't said anything. The moment he finished speaking, Lubia exploded. She glared at Dustless, her anger soaring like a volcano that was about to erupt. Your plan has nothing to do with me. Dustless completely ignored Lubia's anger and said calmly, that guy went against me, what's wrong with killing him? You'll pay with your life too. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As soon as she finished speaking, Lubia attacked again, the sword light sweeping toward Dustless's head. Clang clang clang. Sparks flew as Dustless reached out to grab the dangerous edge. Lubia's arm trembled slightly as if she had hit a meteorite. Are you a human or not? Lubia was dumbfounded and looked at Dustless in horror. What kind of monster was this? One moment he could ignore physical attacks, the next his skin was comparable to a meteorite. Was there a human like this? That's not important. The problem now is, you're going to be unlucky. Dustless walked toward Lubia step by step with a sinister look on his face. You're not allowed to attack my sister. After understanding what had happened, Claire decisively kicked Dustless aside and jumped to Lubia's side, causing Dustless to roll his eyes. I say, Claire, you're too good at kicking me to the curb after I've outlived my usefulness. Just now you were afraid that I would paralyze your sister, but now you're protecting her. Dustless complained loudly, his face full of displeasure. Dustless's words made Claire's face turn red. She awkwardly explained, let bygones be bygones. You're a great person, so please don't hold a grudge against me. Do as you please. Dustless was too lazy to continue arguing. In the beginning, he didn't intend to make things difficult for Lubia. After all, there was no grudge between them, and he hadn't harmed Claire from the beginning. However, even if I let her go, your sister will be finished sooner or later. Right now, she is just a facade. Her life force is about to be squeezed dry. Dustless shook his head, full of pity. Frankly speaking, it was all because of Claire that Nubia had fallen to her current state. If she had followed the will of the Fire Elf King, she wouldn't be in such dire straits now. What do you mean? Claire's expression changed as she asked nervously, is it because of the incantation? I'm fine. A faint smile appeared on Lubia's face. She patted Claire's shoulder lightly and smiled calmly. I don't regret it. Sister, hearing this, the rims of Claire's eyes reddened, and her voice was choked with sobs. They had just reunited, and it wouldn't be long before they were separated by life and death. Right. Claire's eyes suddenly lit up as she looked at Dustless with a shifty gaze. She said excitedly, Alice's sister also seemed to have been implanted with a rune, but dustless cured her. That's absolutely impossible. Nubia shook her head like a rattledrum. She refused to believe it and said, implanted runes will damage the circulation of divine might. Moreover, I have more than one rune in my body. That kind of number, sigh. Anyway, I've already gotten over it. She sighed faintly. She had seen through everything. She clenched her teeth and said unwillingly, my only regret is that I can't kill the Elf King. Speaking of this, Nubia's eyes flashed with blood-red viciousness. She was filled with extreme hatred for the Elf King. You sure know how to talk. Claire saw that Dustless wasn't moving, so she unceremoniously lashed out with her whip. Paw! Dustless easily caught the whip. He shook his head and said, Claire, you can't be expecting me to save her, right? She still wanted to kill me before. Moreover, he blinked his eyes and saw the state of Nubia's body. He frowned and said, implanting so many runes, you really are crazy. For example, Grievous and Versilia both had a Mangekyo rune implanted in their hearts, but Nubia was different. Under the observation of the Tensigan, she could see the internal condition of her body at a glance. There were Mangekyo runes everywhere. It doesn't matter. It's just a broken pot. Nubia was more determined than expected. Her eyes were very calm and there was no change in them. A broken pot. Hearing this, Claire was stunned. She asked nervously, could it be that sister has other problems? Nonsense. Otherwise, who would implant so many runes in their body? Dustless interjected, it's precisely because she knows that she doesn't have a good life, so she took a gamble and implanted a large number of incantation engravings in her body. This is the so-called breaking a broken jar. The strongest spirit you stole from the Fire Spirit King, the God-slaying flame. You should have signed a contract with it, right? Dustless asked softly. Yes. Nubia didn't hide anything. Dustless already knew. Isn't it just a contract with a spirit? Is it more dangerous than your Esther? Claire asked. When she wanted to sign a contract with Esther, the frightening scene was still vivid in her mind. She would never forget it for the rest of her life. She was almost killed. That's not it. Dustless shook his head and explained, the price for signing a contract with the God-slaying flame is your life. What? There's such an evil spirit. Claire exclaimed and looked at Nubia in disbelief. That's indeed the case. Facing Claire's gaze, Ruby nodded. Dustless was speaking the truth. Sometimes, when one obtained great power, they were destined to give up some things. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2277. Can it be treated? Claire looked at Dustless with watery eyes. She was on the verge of tears. It seemed that if Dustless rejected her, she would cry out in pain the next second. Seriously. This girl wanted to kill me before, and now she wants me to save her. Dustless was quite distressed. He rubbed his nose and nodded. It's not a problem to save her, but your sister, don't think that I will thank you just because you said that. Don't try to lie to me. Nubia shook her head stubbornly. She didn't trust Dustless. In her opinion, such a terminal illness couldn't be cured. It had been so for hundreds of years. That's great. I don't want to use my chakra to save an ingrate. Dustless turned his head and ignored Nubia. What a joke, as if he was begging her. Sister, this isn't Dustless bragging, but he really has such a powerful ability. Claire tried her best to persuade her. After all, Versilia and Grievous were living examples. Impossible. Nubia shook her head stubbornly and looked at Dustless with disdain. She said hatefully, Claire, you are too naive. Even Restia was subdued by this kid. From this matter, you can tell that he is a scheming B*tch. Dustless's mouth twitched a few times. If it wasn't for Claire's presence, he definitely wouldn't mind letting this girl understand how extraordinary Tsukuyumi was. Who is she? At this moment, an unfriendly voice suddenly came from behind. Claire's sister. Dustless didn't even turn his head. From this tone, he knew that Versilia had come. Lubia Elstian. Grievous also followed and stared at Lubia. She frowned and said, "You didn't walk into a trap, right? Tell me your goal, Lubia Elstian." Goal, a hint of bitterness flashed in Lubia's eyes. She said helplessly, "My goal was to awaken the power of God Fenzao and use him to destroy the elf kings. Unfortunately, I failed and he is dead." At this point, Lubia looked at Dustless with resentment. Who asked him to be the instigator? Really, that kid provoked me. Is it my fault that I killed him? Dustless felt very conflicted. He simply looked away from Lubia. There is another goal. Lubia's gaze shifted, finally landing on Claire. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly, revealing a gentle smile. To be able to see Claire one last time, I can die without regrets. At the same time, Alice, Linslet, and the others had all rushed over. When they heard Lubia's words, they were quite surprised. She was very different from the legendary Fairy of Calamity. Lubia loved Claire very much and cared for her in every possible way. Even if her life was in danger, she still cared about Claire. Die without regrets. Grievous frowned and looked at Claire. The latter nodded and explained Lubia's current condition in detail. The curse engraving would have been impossible to cure in the past. Moreover, you implanted such an exaggerated number of them in your body. Grievous shook her head and looked at Dustless. She pointed at him and said, "But this guy's ability is extraordinary. The curse engraving problem can be easily solved." How is this possible? Lubia's mouth was wide open. She stared at the frivolous Dustless and said in horror, "Impossible. The curse engraving problem has been plaguing the continent for hundreds of years. What kind of ability is this guy?" Lubia knew Grievous's identity. There was no need for her to lie to her. "I don't know the specifics, but Dustless really does have that kind of unimaginable power." Grievous smiled bitterly and shook her head. She realized that her previous understanding was too one-sided. She could only shrug and say, "Perhaps some people are destined to be different from others." It was undeniable that some people were destined to have different destinies from the moment they were born. The celestial being Fengzao was such an example. Other than Dustless, he was the only male elf user in the world. You can really solve the problem of my body." Lubia's voice trembled as she looked at Dustless. Even though she hid her excitement very well, everyone could still hear it. As the saying goes, even ants are greedy for life. Who would want to die if they could live? The incurable disease in your eyes is just a small problem in my eyes. Dustless looked at Lubia indifferently and said lazily, "Just now, who was the one who said that I was only good-looking? I'm a very vengeful person." This guy. Dustless's words caused everyone to roll their eyes. Claire asked unhappily, "What do you want?" "Don't forget that you're my slave elf." Hearing this, Dustless only lightly glanced at Claire before directly ignoring her. He lazily said, My body's been stiff recently, and my legs and feet hurt whenever I move. I'm still lacking someone to wash my feet and massage my back. Do you want to come and try?" As soon as she finished speaking, Wuchen looked at Lubia with an expression that said, "You've struck gold." "What did you say, you bastard? Are you trying to raise the price?" Claire exploded. Her eyes were spitting fire, as if she wanted to melt Dustless. "Phew. I promise you." Lubia took a deep breath and was unusually calm. If dustless could cure her, washing her feet and massaging her back was really nothing. Compared to her life, what was it? It was a piece of cake. Even Lubia, who was used to seeing people's evil intentions, thought that dustless was being merciful. She also understood that this was a punishment for speaking without thinking. To be honest, to someone who was used to seeing the fickleness of human nature, this wasn't an insult at all. In fact, it was very benevolent. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 reviews plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2279. The Chibaku Tensei disappeared, and the sky turned blue again. The huge deterrent force that oppressed people's nerves also disappeared. The only thing left was the devastated earth. The surrounding environment was originally surrounded by mountains. However, dustless activated the Chibaku Tensei, causing the mountains within a few kilometers to be razed to the ground, turning into an endless plain area. Julius. What happened just now? At this moment, Reinhardt and Julius also stopped fighting. Both of them were dumbfounded as they looked at the terrible environment around them. Who had such a heaven-defying method? It should be a natural disaster, right? Julius said with uncertainty. Thinking of the terrifying super-meteorite just now, he couldn't help but shudder. If it fell, he and Julius would definitely die. Where's the white whale? Reinhardt looked at the sky, but there was no trace of the blue sky at all. Both of us were shocked. The white whale has long been scared away. Julius said angrily. Also, that kid, Kai Yuezhuai, seems to have disappeared too. Where did he go? On the other side, Amelia and the others left according to Dustless's instructions, but they encountered other dangers. At this moment, the girls were surrounded by a group of witch cult followers. He. The strange young man walked slowly, looking at Amelia and the others with a wicked smile, and proudly introduced himself. This is not the first time we've met, but I still have to introduce myself. I'm the witch cult's sloth, great sinner, Bertricius Romanicanti. It's absolutely impossible. That fellow has already been killed by Dustless. All the women were extremely shocked when they heard this, and their trust towards these words was zero. It could be him indeed. Amelia suddenly spoke, remembering the previous conversation with Dustless, and explained, Dustless once told me that although Bertricius's strength is average, he is cunning and astute. He has stored the invisible hand in many of his followers, so even if the real Bertricius dies, he can still be resurrected. This guy in front of us is probably resurrected by a host. He is indeed a scheming man. Hearing this, everyone nodded in unison. This guy looked incomparably arrogant, but he was unexpectedly smart. No wonder he lived so freely. TSK, many thanks for the praise. As thanks, I will kill all of you in a straightforward manner. The young man possessed by Bertricius laughed sinisterly. He glanced at Amelia and the others and noticed that one of them was missing. He frowned and said, Where is the guy I hate the most? If I remember correctly, his name was Dustless. It would have been fine if he hadn't thought of Wu Qin. Once he thought of Wu Qin, Bertricius's face suddenly twisted and became as ferocious as a ghost. It was as exaggerated as if Wu Qin was his enemy who had killed his father and they had an irreconcilable blood feud. After all, he had been killed by Dustless once, and this guy had even insulted the witch, which had deeply infuriated Bertricius. Hurry up and ask that guy to come out. I want to tear him apart with my own hands. Bertricius said angrily. He clenched his fists so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. At the same time, he began his self-mutilating exercise by biting his fingers madly. You still want to challenge Lord Dustless? You overestimate yourself. Erosa sneered at Bertricius and poured cold water on him mercilessly. That lord can crush you with one punch. No, he can crush you with one finger. Is that so? Petruchus was furious when he heard this. He suddenly waved his hand, and a large group of witches' followers behind him pounced on the few of them. I may not be able to do anything to Dushless, but I still have confidence in the few of you. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Under Petruchus's command, a large group of witches' followers pounced on the few of them in a frenzy. Petruchus's command was the command of God to them. A bunch of reckless fools. Petruchus smiled sinisterly and said, "Remember, don't hurt them. Don't let them get hurt at all. Capture them alive, especially that woman called Amelia. I want to slowly torture them to death in front of Dustless." Bang bang bang. The few of them were indeed quite strong. The witches' followers who were attacking them were no match for them at all. They were beaten up in various ways and completely swept away. A bunch of useless fools. Petruchus cursed loudly. Then, he suddenly shouted, "All of you, stop." As soon as his voice fell, a large number of black hands emerged from behind Petruchus and pounced on the few of them. These black hands were extremely special. Only people with witches' genes could see them. As for Rem and the others, they could not see them either. Therefore, they were all subdued in an instant. The black hands grabbed the few of them tightly, strangling them until their faces and necks turned red. It was extremely uncomfortable. Hee, compared to me, all of you are too weak. Petruchus laughed wildly and was extremely proud of himself. It was as if the one who was caught was Dustless. Dustless will definitely crush you to death. Rem looked at Petruchus with an unfriendly face. He was not afraid at all. There was only endless disgust. His eyes were filled with disgust as if he had seen a fat worm. He almost vomited. "You're courting death." Petruchus was furious. How dare a mere captive be so arrogant? He laughed sinisterly. "Then I'll start with you. How about I break your limbs and head?" That crackling sound of bones breaking is the sound of nature. Don't force your ugly habits on others, especially such cute girls. You actually want to break their limbs and heads. Calling you a pervert is an insult to the word. Dustless's lazy voice suddenly sounded. The hearts of the girls were ignited with hope. "Sorry, it took some time to deal with Vegetable Subaru and White Whale. You have suffered. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 2281. Boy, why are you in a daze? Quickly hand over the valuable things to me. The three hooligans looked at Dustless fiercely, and their words revealed a deep contempt. Looking at his sluggish appearance, he was probably scared silly. Useless trash. One of the hooligans with a knife laughed disdainfully. It seems that it really is another world from scratch. Dustless sighed, and immediately picked his ears, and smiled at the three hooligans. "What did you say just now?" "Grandpa has earplugs, I didn't hear it clearly, repeat it for me." "Boy, you are courting death." Hearing this, the three of them were furious and instantly rushed over. Reckless thing. Dustless saw this and his killing intent was awe-inspiring. This kind of mortal, he didn't want to lower himself to their level, but if the other party wants to die, then there is no other way. Killing you all would be letting you off too easily. Just live on in fear. The scarlet eyes blinked and a majestic eye power invaded the minds of these people. Plop. These people obviously couldn't resist Dustless's Sharingan, and they suddenly fell to the ground, their bodies trembling. Idiot, next time when I rob, I must pick the old, weak, women and children. Without looking at the three of them, Dustless walked out of the alley. Rumble. At this time, Dustless's stomach failed to live up to his expectations, and his pace suddenly accelerated a lot. Let's find a place to eat first, the rest can be discussed later. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. At the moment when he was about to walk out of the alley, a black shadow sped past. Although the figure was very short and was still a child, but the skill was abnormally strong, and he skillfully jumped on the wall and disappeared from Dustless's sight. That kid just now seems to be Ferret, right? A short kid suddenly appeared in his mind. Dustless muttered to himself, what a familiar scene, could it be that Ferret snatched Amelia's badge? Dustless lowered his head and thought while walking, some places are always amazing coincidences. Ta 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 ta. At this moment, the sound of messy footsteps came from the front. Dustless was obviously too engrossed in his thoughts. He still kept his head down and didn't give way. Bang! The mysterious newcomer bumped into Dustless in an instant, and both of them retreated at the same time. Why are there so many unlucky things happening when I just came to this world? Am I possessed by the tragic protagonist, Leon? Wu Chen muttered. At the same time, he raised his eyes and his pupils suddenly shrank. The person who bumped into Dustless was a delicate and cute girl. She had hair that reached her waist, purple eyes that sparkled like crystals, and a white flower on her forehead. Realizing that this person was strangely familiar, Dustless subconsciously asked, Amelia? You know me? The silver-haired girl's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. She stared at Dustless again and again, and finally shook her head. I know you, but you definitely don't know me. Dustless smiled and introduced himself. Nice to meet you, my name is. Without giving Dustless time to introduce himself, an anxious shout suddenly came. Amelia, that guy is Dustless, he's with that thief. What the hell, someone actually knows me. Is there a transmigrator like me? Dustless was flabbergasted, and he stood there stupidly without moving. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A large number of icicles suddenly shot at Dustless, and easily froze him. His whole body was covered in thick ice, and only his head was fine for the time being. Good job, Parker. The voice spoke again, its tone wild with joy. It ran over from behind Amelia, and Dustless was extremely familiar with this person, Leon. He was also the most tragic protagonist of the year. June, that's impossible, how does this guy Leon know me? Dustless was covered in thick ice, and his body's movements were restricted. He couldn't figure it out, and wondered in his heart, this is clearly the first time we've met, why is this kid looking at me with such an expression? Looking up, he saw Leon staring at Dustless with bloodshot eyes. This feeling was as if he had met the enemy who killed his father, and he couldn't wait to tear Dustless into pieces. This should be the first time we've met, right? Dustless was the first to speak. However, Leon did not care. He said to Amelia, this guy is called Dustless. He's in cahoots with the kid who stole your badge just now, and, Leon looked at Dustless with hatred, and slandered, this guy is simply a deranged bastard, the degree of his cruelty is outrageous, he doesn't even spare the old, the weak, the women, and the children. The number of innocent women he raped is at least 10,000, if not 100,000. So deranged. Is there such a bad person in the world? Amelia's face was also full of shock, and then she looked at Dustless seriously and asked coldly, is what Leon said true? Dustless was dumbfounded, and his mind was in a mess. The beginning of this script is not right, I've always been the one to slander others, but this time, someone has turned the tables, and it's that little bastard Leon. No doubt this is the first time I've met him, but why does he hate me? Dustless's brain cells sped up, and then he had a flash of inspiration, and muttered to himself, this kid even knows my name, this is the strangest part, seems like there's only one possibility. Could it be that Leon was killed by me in the past, and then, Death's Return, and knows that I'm the big boss of the villain, so he hates me so much? Does he want to use Amelia to get rid of me? With this thought, the confusion in Dustless's heart suddenly cleared up. If Leon was killed by him in the past, then it was reasonable for him to hate Dustless now. This time, I'm going to kill you. Leon looked at Dustless with hostility. Dustless had guessed right, he was cut into pieces by Dustless, and his body was fed to the monsters. After he was rewound and resurrected, Leon hated Dustless to the core. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2282. This is interesting. I used to be the only one who knew the future, but now Leon has turned the tables. Even I have fallen into his trap. Wu Chen smiled but didn't say anything. He looked at Amelia and explained, "Young miss, everything I said before is obviously nonsense. I don't know that thief and we aren't in the same group. We haven't even met. Amelia, don't listen to his bullshit. I can guarantee you that he is the demon of the night, a pervert who won't let go of the old, the weak, the women, and the children." Keiichi Subaru continued to defame her. The previous miserable memory emerged in his heart. He was almost killed by Dustless, and in the end, he was chopped into 8 pieces and fed to the demon beasts. Although he was now in the samsara of death, there was still a shadow that couldn't be erased. Therefore, Keiichi Subaru decided to take the initiative. Instead of waiting for Dustless to take revenge on him, he might as well take the initiative and kill him. "Little girl, you don't really believe him, do you?" Noticing that Amelia was looking at him suspiciously, Dustless was extremely depressed. What Dark Knight Demon King? It was completely fabricated by this brat. I believe in Pleiades. You are a good person. He will not accuse you. Amelia finally stood on Leon's side and looked at Dustless with hostility. I can't believe I was tricked by Keiichi Pleiades. If I don't make you suffer, I will take your last name. Wu Chen was furious. His body emitted a dangerous energy fluctuation. The ice that froze his body made a ka sound. His scarlet eyes locked on Liu Subaru. Bang! Dustless's aura was seriously too horrifying, instantly shattering the ice that covered his body. Little mouse hiding in the dark, come out. Dustless's gaze swept past Amelia and Liu Subaru. Behind the two of them, there was a flickering figure, especially that head of fiery red hair and white coat, which was extremely dazzling. Such sharp senses. The handsome young man frowned and did not mingle with the crowd. He was handsome and had a slender sword at his waist. This guy is called Reinherit, right? Dustless muttered to himself. He knew that the guy in front of him had inherited the title of Sword Saint. His strength was at the peak of this world. But Dustless was not afraid of him. Clang! 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 Reinhardt put his hands in his pockets and looked at Dustless with a serious look in his eyes. A look of disbelief flashed across his eyes as he muttered to himself in disbelief, "My sword seems to be trembling. Why is that?" Reinhardt's sword was very special. It was called the Dragon Sword, Reed. It had its own consciousness. If it judged that the opponent was not qualified to draw it, it would not take the initiative to unsheath it. If the opponent was strong, Reinhardt's sword would automatically unsheath. Why is it shaking? Reinhardt was extremely confused. She cursed in her heart, he should be fighting with Reinhardt, why is he fighting with me? Did I remember the previous plot wrongly? Let me enjoy it. The enraged Dustless grabbed Keiichi Subaru, and with a wave of his hand, he slapped Keiichi Subaru to the ground and raised his foot to step on him. Who told you to use me to show off? Who told you to pick up girls with me? Who told you to slander me? Every time Keiichi Subaru roared, a footprint would appear on his face. She had planned to show off her power in front of Amelia, but the result was exactly what she had said. She failed to show off and was trampled on. As a result, Keiichi Subaru's face was disfigured. However, it was not difficult for Keiichi Subaru. As long as he used the return of the dead again, all the previous tragedies would happen again. Okay, I promise you that you will lead us to find the thief. If you are really wronged, I am willing to sincerely apologize. Amelia finally agreed to Dustless's condition. At the same time, she walked to Keiichi Subaru's side and helped him heal the scar on his cheek. Gosh, this chick is too kind. Dustless glanced at Amelia, who was helping Keiichi Subaru, and shook his head. At the same time, he frowned. I can't let Keiichi Subaru die. This guy can't be killed. If I kill him, his protagonist aura will activate again. That overpowered rewind skill might even drag me back and start all over again. Dustless was in a dilemma. This was the first time he had encountered such a tricky situation. No matter how he killed Keiichi Subaru, this guy would come back to life again. Let's go. I will take you to find that little bastard and prove your innocence. About half an hour later, Keiichi Subaru's bloody face had returned to normal. However, his whole face was still swollen like a hydrogen balloon. Damn you, Dustless. I will not forgive you. Keiichi Subaru, who was grimacing in pain, glared at Wu Qin. Her eyes were fixed on Wu Qin as if she wanted to swallow him alive. Also, damn it, this is like seeing a ghost. Is there something wrong with my skill? Keiichi Subaru cursed in his mind. According to the plot before his death return, Dustless wouldn't even bother to talk to them. He would crush them with his overwhelming strength and then walk away. However, this time, Dustless took the initiative to take them to find Ferret. How could Keiichi Subaru not be surprised? Plio-kun, can you walk? Amelia asked with concern. Of course I can walk. This guy's leg is not broken. Why can't I walk? I just stepped on his face. Dustless looked at Keiichi Subaru with a smile and said, Boy, are you trying to pretend that your leg is broken so that this lady can help you take advantage of it? You. How is that possible? I'm not a despicable person like you. Keiichi Subaru looked at Dustless seriously. He wanted to grab Amelia's hand, but after hearing what Dustless said, he immediately pushed Amelia away. This bastard must be doing it on purpose. Keiichi Subaru cursed Dustless in his mind. His heart was bleeding. He had planned to do it, but after hearing what Dustless said, he even helped Amelia up. Didn't that mean that he agreed with Dustless's words? Don't think that you are so great just because you can rewind. Dustless sneered. Keiichi Subaru could only rewind if he died. If he didn't die, his skill would be useless and he would still be a weak piece of trash. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2285. Dustless sneered. Looking at Keiichi Subaru's bitter face, he knew that he had guessed right. This guy did have such a shameless idea. You want to use me to pick up girls? You are quite ambitious. How dare you use me to slap your face? Dustless moved closer to Keiichi Subaru and said in a low voice, You can show off in front of me, but if you go too far, I can't help but throw you to the fish. That would be a tragedy. You, hearing Dustless's threat, Keiichi Subaru trembled and looked at Dustless with fear. He knew that this guy was a man of his words. Before the return of death, he had been cut into pieces by Dustless and fed to the magical beasts. Wait and see. Glaring at Dustless fiercely, Keiichi Subaru hid behind Amelia and Reinhardt in an extremely cowardly manner. Trash. Wuchen smiled contemptuously. Then, he led the way in the front and said lazily, "Hurry up. Let's finish it before dark. Then, we can find a place to eat." Dustless left as soon as he finished speaking. His memory was not bad, so he knew the approximate location of the slums. "Follow me, Leah." Parker gave her a comforting look. Although he trusted Keiichi Subaru, Dustless didn't give him the first impression that he was a bad guy. On the surface, he looked a little unreliable and glib-tongued, but he was very calm, as if he had everything under control. About half an hour later, Dustless, Amelia and the others came to a dilapidated slum. The environment was stinky, and flies were flying everywhere. The strange smell was disgusting. The people living here were also thin and sallow. Their clothes were ragged, and their eyes were cloudy and listless. It seemed that they hadn't eaten for a long time. "Girl, this is a dog-eat-dog world. If you are so kind, you will be plotted against sooner or later. There is a limit to everything. Excessive kindness will be used by others." In an abandoned house, Amelia's forehead was covered in sweat. She was saving a fainted drifter. It seemed that she hadn't eaten for many days. Her breathing was very weak. "This guy is really too kind." Dustless looked at Amelia helplessly. Amelia had saved quite a few people along the way. "Mind your own business." Amelia glanced at Dustless. Because of Keiichi Subaru, she hated Dustless. Maybe it was because Dustless beat her. "Hee, you deserve it." Seeing this scene, Keiichi Subaru laughed gloatingly. She was extremely happy to see Wuchen suffer. You can laugh slowly. Sooner or later, you will cry bitterly." In this regard, Dustless also smiled faintly. He was also an old monster who had lived for hundreds of years. It was impossible for him to get angry just because of someone's ridicule. "Let's go." After a few more minutes, Amelia put out the fire of the sallow and emaciated drifter. She also gave him a small amount of money. After that, she followed Dustless to find Ferret and ask for the badge. "We're here." Pointing at the dilapidated house not far away, Dustless finally breathed a sigh of relief. "Fortunately, I didn't remember it wrong. Otherwise, I would have to live with the name of a thief." "Is this the place?" "It seems that the thief who stole my badge was forced to do so. He treated the badge as something valuable and just wanted to make a living." Amelia looked around and said to herself. Ferret's house could barely shelter them from the wind and rain. The house in front of them had been in disrepair for many years. Some parts of the house had already decayed into dregs. "You're right. Although that little girl stole from you, she was forced to do so. If she could live a carefree life, who would be willing to be a thief? It was hard to live a human life. Sometimes, you have to do things that you can't help but have to do," Dustless said with a lot of emotion. "It sounds reasonable." Amelia nodded slightly. It was rare for her to agree with Dustless's point of view. "Humph, it sounds like you are trying to absolve yourself of your crime." A sarcastic voice came. Turning around, it was Keiichi. As for Reinhardt, he had quietly left. As for what he was going to do, Dustless didn't know. He guessed that he was looking for more people to help deal with Dustless just in case. Facing Dustless alone, Reinhardt didn't have enough confidence. Creak. The door was gently opened, and a young head popped out. She looked at Dustless with a puzzled face. "Who are you?" This person with a mouth full of doubts blinked her bright eyes. Her voice was quite crisp. This young girl was Ferret. Amelia recognized her at a glance. "Give me back the things you took. I can let bygones be bygones. If it was something else, I wouldn't want it." But that badge means too much to me. Amelia looked at the short ferret and said in a very gentle tone. Perhaps in her opinion, Ferret was still an insensible child. The reason why she became a thief was that she was forced to do so. After all, life in the slums was too difficult. It was difficult to even fill one's stomach. Who stole your things? Don't falsely accuse me. Do you think that I am easy to bully because I am young? Ferret put her hands on her hips and yelled, Master Ram, someone is here to cause trouble. As soon as she said this, a huge and strong old man swooped down. Because of his huge body, the ground trembled slightly when he walked. Who is it that is causing trouble in my territory? Do you want to be smashed into meat paste by me? The giant old man named Ram was very domineering. He carried a huge hammer in his hand, and his aura was awe-inspiring. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2286. Old man, step aside. It's not easy to live to such an old age. Go and retire quietly. You're old and weak. If you get injured, you might die. There's no place for you to behave atrociously here. Dustless was not afraid at all when he saw the old man with eyes as big as brass bells. Gulp. On the other hand, Kaius Subaru was so scared that he hid behind Amelia, his body trembling slightly. Although the death return skill was quite powerful, it did not increase his combat power. After all, Kaius Subaru was still a weakling. Moreover, this golden finger had a huge flaw. It could only be used when he was dead. Therefore, Kaius Subaru was called the most tragic protagonist of the year. Little brat, you're so young but you talk big. Ferocity flashed in Master Ram's old eyes. He lifted the huge hammer and smashed it down. Ha 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 ha. Well done. It's best to smash Dustless into minced meat. He's such an eyesore. I don't want him to spoil my plans every day. I'm the protagonist destined to save the alternate world. Kaius Subaru laughed and cheered in his heart. He gave the crazy Master Ram a thumbs up. Lord Pleiades, Amelia frowned. She was disgusted by this attitude. However, when she recalled the damage Dustless had done to her, she was relieved. In her opinion, Kaius Subaru was just holding back his anger. He would return to normal once he vented it out. Seeing the hammer falling on his head, Dustless was calm and relaxed. He stretched out his skinny arm lazily and said, Old man, you're so old and yet you're still looking for trouble. You'll be killed sooner or later. You arrogant guy. Do you think you can block Master Ram's attack with one hand? You're overestimating yourself. Run if you know what's good for you. I didn't steal anything from you. Falut crossed her arms in front of her and pouted slightly. She did not hide the sneer on her face. She quickly distanced herself from Master Ram as if she was afraid that Dustless would be smashed into minced meat and his blood would stain her body. This guy. You're no match for him. Run away from Dustless. Amelia also became nervous. She couldn't help but worry for Dustless. He sincerely felt that he was overestimating himself. After all, how powerful could a hand that had not been enchanted with magic power be? He was probably not much stronger than an ordinary person. Although Amelia hated Dustless because of Kaius Subaru, she didn't want him to die, especially when he was trying to help her find her badge. Boom boom boom. Faint mana fluctuations burst out of Dustless's body, and just as Amelia was about to save him, the mace smashing down had already covered Dustless's head. Ah, this is bad, this is bad. Seeing such a cruel scene, I'm definitely going to have nightmares. Falut hurriedly closed her eyes and covered her eyes with her hands, unable to bear to look at this bloody scene. Kaius Subaru was the same. He quickly covered his eyes. Chapter 2287. Cough, cough, cough. Master Ram suddenly coughed twice, his face twitched, and said in a strange tone, "Misunderstanding, this is all a misunderstanding." The form was stronger than the person. When it was time to lower one's head, one had to lower one's head. After living for most of his life, Master Luo Mu understood this basic principle very well. "Old man, you are very flexible." Dustless smiled and did not make things difficult for him. He looked at Ferret and said calmly, "Putting aside the time when you stole Amelia's badge, this should be the first time we met." Although Ferret did not know what Dustless was talking about, it was the truth, so he nodded and confirmed that Dustless was telling the truth. "Oh no, I'm going to be exposed." Seeing this, Kaitsuki Subaru's heart skipped a beat. He subconsciously looked at Dustless, but he was nowhere to be seen. "Boy, you accused me of colluding with Ferret and being her accomplice, right? Now, how are you going to explain this?" Sensing danger, Kaitsuki Subaru was about to hide behind Amelia, but he did not expect a cold voice from behind. Before he could run to Amelia's back, he was caught by a big hand. "Who caught me? Let me go." Kaitsuki Subaru felt even more uneasy. The moment he turned his head, his pupils suddenly shrank, and he shouted angrily, "Dustless, let me go." Being carried by Dustless like a chicken, Kaitsuki Subaru felt particularly aggrieved. "Let him go." Amelia was stunned for a moment, then she scolded, "Bullying a weak person like Plyakin will only make you look shameless." "It doesn't matter." Dustless did not care. He smiled and said very casually, "Anyway, I'm thick-skinned. It's useless for you to mock me. I've always been a person with flaws." Since he dared to slander me, what's wrong with me teaching him a lesson? Amelia's pretty face was extremely embarrassed. It was undeniable that this matter was indeed Kaitsuki Subaru's fault. After all, he had accused Dustless of colluding with Ferret. Now that the truth was clear, teaching this boy a lesson was reasonable. "My lord is magnanimous." Dustless looked at Kai Yuehong with a generous face. "I'll give you 2 chances. Kneel down and kowtow to admit your mistake, or I'll beat you up. Which one do you choose? You call this magnanimous?" Dustless's words made Kaiyuazuo's nose almost crooked. She glared at him and said, "You want me to kneel before you? Dream on." "All right then." Dustless's eyes turned cold. He fiercely pushed Kaiyuazuo to the ground and kicked her. "How dare you accuse me? Let's see how arrogant you can be. That's what you get for not having the ability to act tough. That's what you get for relying on your rewind cheat." In less than a minute, footprints appeared on Keiichi Subaru's face. Dustless didn't show any mercy. Every time he stepped on Keiichi Subaru's face, a deep red footprint would appear. "Damn it, stop." Amelia couldn't stand it anymore. Chapter 2288. Goodbye, goodbye. I'll leave now. Don't worry, I promise I won't appear in front of you again. The colorless king fled frantically. After escaping from the gates of hell, he cherished his life even more. Swish, swish, swish. His body turned into a dazzling light and disappeared into the vast sky. Someone as powerful as Dustless could easily destroy his confidence. How terrifying would he be when he was serious? Thinking of this, the colorless king felt a chill down his spine. Is the body cold? Turning his head to look at Toshiro, who had closed his eyes, Dustless left decisively. After all, this guy's death had nothing to do with him, so there was nothing to feel guilty about. Moreover, in the original work, this guy was killed by the colorless king. Let them take revenge on the colorless king. Anyway, the video recorded the murderer, so Dustless didn't have to worry about anything. As for the force behind Toshiro, he was one of its members. There were many people in the organization, and most of them were gangsters. They were extremely violent and arrogant. The person who led them was the Red King, Zhou Fangzuan. Now that Toshiro was dead, this group of people would definitely not let it go. They would fight the colorless king to the death. Forget it, I'll talk about the future in the future. For now, I'll find a place to fill my stomach. I'm hungry too. Dustless lowered his head and looked around. Then, he saw a restaurant in the distance and walked over. Meow, meow, meow. Just as Dustless left, a cute cat with pure white fur suddenly walked out from the darkness. After looking at the bloody scene, it didn't stay any longer and followed Dustless's footsteps. As for the Izona Society, it only took a few more glances. About an hour later. Where should I go? I can't always wander around, right? Late at night, Dustless was in a dilemma. He sat alone on a park bench, staring at the stars in the sky. He was in a daze, bored out of his mind. Beside him was a plastic bag full of various snacks. Meow meow meow. Suddenly, a white kitten slowly walked over. It looked at the food in the bag, but it seemed to be very afraid of Dustless. It didn't dare to get close. Its voice was very pitiful, but it sounded more like a spoiled child. Hee hee. It's the middle of the night. I didn't expect the cat to keep me company. Dustless smiled bitterly and sighed. He immediately threw a few bags of snacks to the white kitten. The kitten was extremely smart. It raised its paw and tore the bags into pieces. What a smart kitten. Dustless was slightly taken aback. Soon after, he looked at the night sky in boredom, thinking about where to go next. Continuing to wander was not a good idea. Meow 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 meow. The kitten seemed to think that Dustless was not a bad person. She suddenly jumped into Dustless's arms and looked at him eagerly. Out of the corner of her eyes, she peeked at the snacks in the bag. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. After looking at it again and again, he was overjoyed. Take Totora's body back and bury him. He won't die in vain. The bastard who killed him won't let him go easily. We must use his blood as a sacrifice to Todora. Kusanagi Izumo shouted, and his whole body was covered in crimson flames. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, 3 days later, the news of the death of Todora, a senior cadre of Dewullo, swept the entire city in a short time. The entire Dewullo was in an uproar, and people were wantonly searching for the murderer. As for the colorless king and Dustless, they also became the focus of attention. But Dustless knew nothing about these trivial matters. He and Mao rented a luxurious villa. Anyway, Dustless has the ability of king's treasure. He lacks everything except money. He can squander it wantonly and live the life of a nouveau riche like a nouveau riche. The middle of the Reed Academy is the closest school nearby. Because of the relationship with Sharingan, Dustless successfully controlled the principal and got the position of a teacher. Why is it a healthcare teacher again? In front of the healthcare teacher's office, Dustless looked unlucky. He used to be a healthcare teacher in other worlds. It was really inconvenient for him to have intimate contact with female students in some places. But Dustless searched the memory of the principal. What this school lacks is only a healthcare teacher. Creak. Just as he pushed the door open, a few students with anxious expressions came into view. I'm the new healthcare teacher, what's the matter? Looking at the anxious girls, Dustless frowned and asked. Suddenly, he found a silver-haired boy lying on the hospital bed. Dustless walked over and his pupils suddenly shrank. Isn't this the kid from Izona Club? Dustless was quite surprised. He didn't expect to meet this kid here. He couldn't help but guess in his heart, but who is this guy? Is he the colorless king or the first king, the silver king, Adolf K. Weitzman? Quietly looking at Izona Club, Dustless pondered. In the original work, Mao modified the memory of Izona Club, causing this guy to not remember who he is. Now that I took Mao away, this guy's memory is intact. So, the current him is the Silver King, Adolf K. Weitzman. As for the original colorless king, he was probably scared to death by Dustless and left this body long ago. So if he guessed correctly, the Silver King should be the one controlling the personality of this body. After that, Wuchen asked where this group of students found the Izona Club. Everyone's answer was also very simple. When they found the club, they had fainted in the school. As for where they came from, no one knew. All of you can go back. After a while, Dustless ordered them to leave. He didn't care about Izona Club. This guy's body had the Silver King, and his ability was not taken away. He could be immortal and float without gravity. Even if Dustless left him alone, he would wake up on his own. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2290. In a flash, it was almost noon. Dustless didn't have the skills to cook, so he had no choice but to go to the restaurant with Mao Air to have a full meal. During this period, Dustless repeatedly ordered Mao Air to put on her clothes. Only then did she put on her clothes reluctantly, as if she was suffering a lot. Dustless could only laugh dryly. But when they came out of the restaurant, tragedy suddenly struck. They were surrounded by a group of fierce-looking people, each of them holding a fighting weapon like a club in their hands. You! What do you want? Dustless asked with a frown. This group of people looked fierce, and at a glance, he knew that they weren't good people. They also had various tattoos. The most conspicuous thing was that Dustless also saw the Bark Willow logo on each of them, and he understood the purpose of this group of people in his heart. These people are not good people. Dustless couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Mao Air seemed to have noticed the hostility of these people and hid behind Dustless very timidly. Immediately, she exposed her head and angrily rebuked, "You have found the wrong person, Dustless. Dustless is not the person you are looking for. Little girl, you changed your words quickly." Dustless rolled his eyes at Mao Air. Hearing the name Little Wu, Dustless had goosebumps. But she is right. You have found the wrong person. Get out of the way. Looking at the eyes of several people, Dustless said calmly. You think we will get out of the way just because you said so? You don't put our Bark Willow in your eyes. An extremely arrogant tone suddenly came. After the group of hooligans heard the voice, they immediately got out of the way. Then, a young man dressed in a non-mainstream way came into view. He was riding a skateboard confidently, with an unruly expression on his cold face. At first glance, one could tell that he was a delinquent young man. He was not old, estimated to be around 20 years old. How did Mr. Duoliang die? You have to explain it to me clearly. The young man with the skateboard looked at Dustless with hostility. He held a baseball bat and looked extremely arrogant. The first impression he gave was that he was the type who would start a fight if there was a disagreement. Another familiar face. Looking at the newcomer in surprise, Wuchen recognized this person. If I remember correctly, your name is Hadamiko, right? You know me. Hadamiko was slightly taken aback and immediately said with a deep face, "Who allowed you to call me by my name?" Dustless's expression changed slightly. A sharp light flashed in his eyes, and his tone turned cold. "If I don't call you by your name, what should I call you? Do you want me to call you Tom, Dick, or Harry?" Dustless originally had no intention to lower himself to the same level as this Shinobi youth. However, the other party was not tactful and full of hostility. He did not understand the principle of keeping a low profile at all. Since that was the case, there was no need for him to be polite. You're courting death. Sure enough, this guy really belonged to the conceited and arrogant type. He stepped hard on the ground with his right foot and slid the skateboard over quickly. The bat had already smashed toward Wu Chen's head. You're itching for a beating. Then I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of your family. Dustless said to himself, his hands clenched into fists. Shio shio shio. Seeing that the bat was about to hit Dustless's head, in a flash, a black shadow rushed over and blocked in front of Dustless. With a clang sound, a long sword was unsheathed, and the words, Fu Jian, draw your sword, could be heard. Bang! Hadamiko's bat hit the long sword, and the rebound force made both of them take a few steps back. The person who suddenly stood up to support Dustless was obviously on the same level as him. Neither of them could do anything to the other. Another acquaintance, Fu Jian Arubigu. Silver glanced at the person. Of course, he didn't think that he was here to help him. The two of them didn't get along well, and maybe he helped because he was annoyed by Hadamiko. The one in blue. Get out of my way, monkey. After seeing her old enemy, Hadamiko shouted angrily. Mei Ruo, so it's you. Fu Jian pointed at Wu Chen with an arrogant expression, as if he was announcing his possession. He then said loudly, our leader wants this person. You guys, Fei Wuluo, can get lost now. Dustless looked at this scene quietly, and couldn't help but laugh in his heart. What did this group of clowns think of him as? A commodity that anyone could snatch? Or a passerby? They could pick it up and snatch it at will. However, Dustless didn't make a move. He looked calm and resigned to his fate. He just watched silently, and his eyes were fixed on Hadamiko. The reason why he didn't make a move was that he wanted to see why this guy was looking for trouble with him. If he couldn't hold back and crippled him, no one would ask questions. Your leader. Hearing this, Hadamiko smiled proudly. What a coincidence, this guy is also the person our boss is looking for. So, monkey, you should go back. Miko, you don't have the final say. Fu Jian Arubigu also insisted. The two of them looked at each other with hostility, and there was a possibility of a fight at any time. Cough, cough, cough. I'm not interested in your grudges, but I still want to interrupt and ask. Dustless looked at the two of them, and saw that they were about to fight. Suddenly, he asked, why are you looking for me? Toshiro was dead, but it had nothing to do with him. The one who killed him was King Colorless. Dustless didn't defend Fu Jian Arubigu, but he still became their prey. I just don't like you. Looking at Dustless, Hadamiko seemed to be joking, but she also seemed to be serious. Clap, clap, clap. Hearing this, Dustless was stunned for a moment, and immediately clapped his hands. His eyes were filled with coldness in an instant. What a coincidence, you guys have been chattering for a long time, and I also don't like you guys. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2291. I just don't like you. Looking at Dustless, Hadamiko seemed to be joking but also seemed to be serious. Clap, clap, clap. Hearing this, Dustless was stunned and immediately applauded. His eyes were cold in an instant. What a coincidence. You've been chattering for a long time. I don't like you either. Dustless was speechless. Originally, he thought that this group of people had always been arrogant and young, so he was too lazy to argue with them and talk nonsense. Who would have thought that Hadamiko was so arrogant? If someone said to you that he didn't like you and wanted to beat you up, what would you do? Everyone would be irritated, not to mention Dustless's bad temper. Don't like me. Hearing this, Hatamiko was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. She was enraged. She gnashed her teeth and said, Mr. Zune said that he would catch you alive, so I won't hurt you. Now take back your words, and apologize to me. Hatamiko was really angry. As a member of the Red Clan, everyone had their own pride, but now she was despised by Dustless. How could she not be angry? What if I refuse? Dustless asked indifferently, You can be barbaric and unreasonable, why can't I? You can be angry with others, but I can't be angry with you. Why? Dustless maintained his composure from beginning to end. Even if he was already fuming in his heart, he still maintained absolute calm. Why? At this moment, not to mention Hatamiko, even Fujian Yuigu sneered with a contemptuous expression. Of course it's because of this. As soon as his voice fell, he raised the long sword in his hand, full of pride. That's right. Hatamiko, who usually fought with Fujian Yuigu, decisively stood on Fujian Yuigu's side and said righteously, Of course it's because of strength. With strength, you can beat me, and I don't care. After all, it's because I'm not as good as you. So, now you come with me and apologize. Miko, this guy is valued by our leader. Don't even think about taking him away. The two of them only talked for a few seconds, and then began to fight again. Fujian Yuigu's face was gloomy. What did you say? Say it again if you dare. I'll smash your head. Hatamiko glared at Fujian Yuigu, her eyes spitting fire, as if she wanted to melt him. You two guys. Dustless could be silent, but Mao could not stand it. After seeing Dustless's strength, he knew how terrible Dustless was. Not to mention these two minions, even if Red King, Zhou Fangzuan and Blue King, Zhongxiang Rusi came, they would not be able to deal with Dustless. Hurry up and apologize, or Dustless will beat you to death. You two will be beaten black and blue, and you won't even recognize your leader. The cat bared its fangs and brandished its claws as a warning. However, it hid behind Dustless from the beginning to the end, as if it was a fox borrowing the tiger's might. Ha! The two who were still quarreling instantly turned their heads and looked at Dustless, and sneered, just by this guy. His arms and legs are thin, and he's not a member of other clans, and he wants to beat us black and blue. Ridiculous, this joke is really tasteless. You're overestimating yourself. Fujian Yuigu also looked down on Dustless. You two are too weak, Dustless won't even bother to fight. Mao continued, unwilling to be outdone, otherwise, he could kill the two of you with a single finger. Don't get carried away. Hearing this, the two's faces changed, and they looked at Dustless with an unfriendly face, and clenched their fists. Perhaps if they did not order Dustless to be captured alive, they would have already beaten him up to vent their anger. You little girl. Turning his head and patting Mao's head, Dustless asked in a bad mood, Are you helping me out, or are you deliberately causing trouble for me? Because of you, they are becoming more and more hostile to me. Who asked them to be so arrogant? They are obviously not your match, but they are still so arrogant. Mao pouted and said with her cheeks pouted, looking very playful and cute. Hearing this, Dustless smiled and immediately turned his head to look at the two. It's useless to apologize. You've successfully infuriated me. Although Mr. Zune wants to capture you alive and not kill you, he can do other things, such as giving you a good beating. At this point, Hatamiko's face suddenly turned ferocious. Beating me up? Dustless laughed, and immediately said bluntly, Boy, you should have seen the video, right? You clearly know that the murderer is King Colorless, but you still want to cause trouble for me, which can only mean one thing. You hate me. Looking at Hatamito's hateful eyes, Dustless said bluntly, You hate me, hate me for having superpowers, and why it wasn't my head that blocked the bullet for Toshiro. Am I right? The thoughts of violent organizations are really hard to understand. Humph. Hearing this, Toshiro didn't say anything, but he thought so in his heart. If Dustless didn't have superpowers and was just an ordinary person, then the bullet would have shattered his body instead of passing through and shattering Toshiro. On the contrary, Toshiro wouldn't have died. It's useless even if you apologize, Mr. Toshiro's death has a lot to do with you. Hadamito looked at Dustless coldly. No, 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 Dustless shook his head, and his eyes instantly became extremely terrifying, like a hungry beast. That oppressive gaze frightened everyone, as if they were being stared at by a furious king, and their whole body trembled in fear. I should be the one saying that, you have successfully angered me, and it's useless to apologize, no one can save you. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.